Every digital screen you have ever looked at is actively lying to your biological senses. We stare at our phones assuming we are seeing a faithful reproduction of physical light, but the light hitting your eyes is entirely hollow. The origin of this optical illusion dates back to the 1940s. Early television engineers were trying to send moving color images over radio frequencies, but natural sunlight contains a massive, continuous spectrum of electromagnetic wavelengths. You cannot practically transmit an infinite spectrum of physical data over a mid-century radio wave. This cross-section of the human eye shows the biological shortcut those engineers invented to solve their physics problem. Human vision is essentially trichromatic. Because our retinas rely heavily on 3 types of photoreceptor cones, early engineers realized they didn't need to broadcast the full spectrum of reality. They only needed to project red, green, and blue light to trick those specific cones. This diagram shows how your brain hallucinates the rest of the colors. If you look at a picture of a yellow school bus on your phone, your screen is not emitting actual physical yellow light. It is simply flashing narrow bands of red and green light right next to each other, forcing your visual cortex to construct the concept of yellow from scratch. We are living inside a low-dimensional approximation of the universe. What you see on a screen is not reality. It is a biological proxy generated by a cheap digital synthesizer. In optics, this cheap synthesizer trick relies on a phenomenon called metamerism. Metamerism occurs when 2 entirely different physical recipes of light trigger the exact same biological response in your eye. 2 light sources might possess wildly different molecular structures, but to human biology, they look absolutely identical. But that illusion is incredibly fragile under ambiguous conditions. Think back to the viral dress photo from 2015. Half the internet saw white and gold, while the other half saw blue and black. Because the RGB light coming from the screen was structurally hollow, our brains tried to automatically guess the ambient lighting of the original room and subtract it. The illusion broke down completely, causing massive deep structural divergence in how we perceived the exact same pixels. This visual models a single square pixel hitting a mathematical wall. For decades, manufacturers knew RGB was flawed, but attempting to add a 4th or 5th primary color to a screen triggered an algebraic nightmare. Creating a single specific color on a multi-primary system yields up to 1 billion different possible combinations for a single pixel. To render a smooth, modern 4K video, a display would have to choose the single correct combination out of 1 billion choices for 8 million individual pixels, up to 120 times every second. Traditional silicon processors choked on the math. They would instantly melt trying to calculate those unmixing equations in real time. We were trapped in the RGB prison, not because our optical hardware couldn't emit better light, but because our computer processors lacked the brute force power to calculate the unmixing equations. To escape, we had to discard the math completely. Recently, display engineers replaced rigid algebraic formulas with artificial intelligence. Neural rendering engines, trained on massive hyperspectral scans of physical reality, now power multi-primary color screens. When fed an old, low-dimensional RGB image, the AI intuitively predicts the structurally correct light recipe in microseconds, without having to crunch the billions of dead-end possibilities. This introduces the isomorphic shift. Having millions of viable light recipes, the AI stops rendering images for a generic, standardized human eye. Instead, it actively tailors the mathematical light recipe to compensate for the unique biological quirks and physical lens degradation of the individual watching the screen. To achieve this bespoke tailoring, the machine needs to know exactly how your biology is reacting in real time. You don't plug a sensor into your arm to provide this data. The standard forward-facing webcam built directly into your laptop bezel is already looking at you. Using high-resolution computer vision, your webcam acts as an emotional mirror. It constantly measures sub-millimeter fluctuations in your pupil amydilation. When you experience positive emotional arousal or intense cognitive engagement, your pupils involuntarily widen. The camera registers that shift, mapping your exact level of interest. It also tracks microsaccades, microscopic, rapid, completely involuntary tremors of the eye. Your primitive lizard brain uses these tremors to subconsciously sweep your peripheral vision for threats and anomalies, locking on to subtle visual cues milliseconds before your conscious mind processes them. The software now possesses a real-time map of your attentional vector. The machine registers what your subconscious prioritizes before you even realize you're looking at it. By identifying when your attention drifts, the operating system can actively intervene, altering its light output to force your cognitive focus back to the screen. Hardware that can meticulously read your biology to soothe your retinas possesses the exact same capability to manipulate you. Developers categorize this under affective computing. By deploying ultra-pure, narrow-band wavelengths of light, a screen can bypass your conscious, rational thought entirely and target deep subcortical structures in your brain. Deep within your inner retina are intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, or iPRGCs. Their primary job is to measure ambient daylight, regulating your internal clock. When a display emits an incredibly narrow band of pure blue light, specifically calibrated to hit the absorption peak of these cells, it sends a signal to your hypothalamus that instantly halts the production of melatonin. If you are doom-scrolling late at night, an app developer can silently instruct your screen to pump this biological daylight into your neurochemistry. Your central nervous system is forced into a state of cognitive alertness. You literally cannot feel sleepy, regardless of your physical exhaustion. The biophysical hijacking gets even more visceral. A display can emit a specific U-saturated neuroband yellow perfectly associated with venomous markers or decaying organic matter. Before you register the color consciously, your autonomic nervous system engages. Your heart rate elevates, your blood pressure spikes, and you experience microsweats, all triggered by a hidden layer of anxiety-inducing light. Defending against weaponized light requires a new framework of visual biosovereignty. Future operating systems will require built-in active firewalls. If an advertisement or a social media feed attempts to request an insomnia-inducing blue or an anxiety-triggering yellow, the system must intercept the request and prompt the user for explicit consent before allowing the biological modulation. Traditional color psychology relies on broad association. Red suggests urgency, blue suggests calm. You can easily ignore it. Affective computing removes your agency entirely. It is a direct biophysical hijack, where the user does not get a conscious vote. Because sensory pathways share overlapping neural real estate in the brain, visual manipulation can actually breach the boundaries of sight. If a visual stimulus possesses an absolutely perfect, high-fidelity spectral signature, it can induce pseudo-sensory experiences in entirely different biological domains. If you look at a digital campfire on a multi-primary display, and the screen emits a smoky gray wavelength with undeniably perfect structural accuracy, the visual cortex can override its own logic. The signal is so pristine that it triggers the associated neural network, forcing you to experience the distinct olfactory memory of actual wood smoke. The same biological cross-wiring applies to taste. A highly saturated ultra-pure lime green primary, dialed into the exact nanometer wavelength of a physical citrus fruit, will forcibly activate your gustatory cortex. Saliva will pool in your mouth from a phantom sour taste simply because your eyes processed a mathematically perfect green light. This sensory cross-wiring paves the way for emotive digital cinema. Tomorrow's directors won't just rely on swelling music and fast cuts. They will paint the shadows of a horror film with deep, autonomic triggering reds, forcing the audience into a literal cold sweat. During a romance scene, they will deploy warm primaries designed to physically trigger pupillary dilation and parasympathetic relaxation. This technology dissolves the barrier between the theater seat and the screen. Directors gain the power to synchronize an entire audience's autonomic state, making a protagonist's physical dread or relaxation a shared physiological fact. As complex as our biology is, human vision is functionally a blunt instrument. We are broadband samplers. Our eyes take massive, messy chunks of the electromagnetic spectrum and average them out, discarding a staggering amount of the universe's true spectral complexity just to keep our primitive brains from overloading. But machines are no longer limited by primate biology. Hardware engineers are currently building 9-color synthetic sensors. These biomimetic artificial eyes do not average light out. They slice incoming light into surgically precise, narrow bands, allowing artificial intelligence to act as a hypersensitive narrow-band discriminator. This specific number of color bands provides a direct bridge to the quantum world. In computational chemistry, modeling the complex g orbitals of excited atoms requires exactly 9 degrees of freedom to solve their wave equations. By gathering 9 distinct spectral data points, the hardware provides the AI with the precise mathematical coordinates it needs to reconstruct the molecular geometry of the matter it's looking at. Where a human eye looks at 2 identical clear liquids and sees water, a laboratory AI equipped with a 9-color sensor sees 2 entirely distinct chemical signatures. It tears down the barrier of metamerism, allowing the machine to observe the actual molecular structure of reality in a relentless pursuit of objective, maximum truth. The rigid boundary between the observer and the observed is collapsing. Displays are shedding their status as passive panes of glass to become physiologically intimate participants in our biology. When a screen is engineered to be structurally purer than nature, inducing phantom tastes and autonomic responses sharper than the physical world itself, humanity faces a profound choice. We must decide which reality we actually want to live in.